My Democratic congressman voted against the health care bill, perhaps because he feared he might not be reelected. What do you think of voting based on self-interest?
Well, there are two theories of representation, the delegate theory of representation, as well as the trustee theory of representation. And your congressman was acting as a delegate because he directly channeled the voice of the people in order to pass the health care bill and win approval that would gain him re-election coming next midterm.
Well, I believe this action by Joseph Cal of Louisiana was improper because I believe that he should have acted as a trustee, where he would see the common good as above the will of his constituency and make his best judgment based upon that.
If this were the British parliamentary system, I would think that it would be a perfectly fine action because of how the system operates. It is assumed that the majority party, which is then referred to as government, has a popular mandate to carry out their party platform, and each representative, each MP, is then takes an oath to their prime minister to follow with such strict party loyalty, and thus the delegate theory is assumed in the British parliamentary system.
Let me follow up on this. Let's assume that you are a delegate role, you're a representative from Congress. How do you really determine what your people want? Is it letters from constituents? Is it a Gallup poll? How are you going to really determine what the people really want if you're going to follow that rule?
Well, if I were a delegate representative, yes, I would try to follow up on what my constituents say. Constituents are upheld to vote and also to send letters. They can contact a delegate representative through email, through phone. And so a delegate representative has to be there in order to hear what the people want.
Personally, I currently work for Congressman Adam Schiff for the 29th Congressional District, and I am constantly getting calls asking, well, what is the congressman voting for? What can he do? And I also, there's also caseworkers or other staff members that are constantly getting casework and helping people. So I feel in that sense you're getting a lot of feedback from your constituents, and me personally, if I was a delegate, I'd want to take in that perspective, but also they trusted me in that position to be their representative. So I should also take that trustee theory and kind of have tension between the two in order to really help my people in their sense, but also in the sense that would help the United States as a whole.
I believe that the only way to really know what your constituents want is through close personal interactions in your district with the constituents.
Although I would contest that that's entirely desirable because congressmen going back to their home districts and living there and getting out of the beltway leads to growth in partisanship, as seen after the ascension of Newt Gingrich to the position of Speaker in the House. He ordered all the congressmen to go back to their districts and to get in touch with their constituencies. But what happened as a result was the congresspeople who used to live in Washington together and have a beer together, discuss things together, those friendships, those bonds diminished. And as a result, they were left representing the very idiosyncratic views of their district and not necessarily getting in touch with each other and overcoming partisanship.
In most of the world's democracies, the system is parliamentary. But in recent years, Israel has allowed its voters to vote separately for prime minister than for a member of parliament. And the British system has become more like the American system with each passing election. Why do you think some of the parliamentary systems are moving closer to our system?
I think that the primary factor is the development and the proliferation of the media. You can see that in the Thursday debates that are going on in British politics right now. It is heartening a shift into something more similar to our politics, whereas in America we're going into a neo-parliamentary system such as described in The Broken Branch by Thomas Mann and Norman Ornstein, in which we're insisting on more party loyalty to get bills passed.
Do you think that the bit of partisanship in Congress today is partly a consequence of the way congressional districts are drawn?
Yes, we do believe that the partisanship in Congress is due to the way districts are drawn, because right now we have districts are drawn in a way to favor political bodies, and we see because of this we have a 90% incumbents rate, and because we do not have competitive districts, each representative from their own district has a highly polarized view, whether they're Democratic or Republican. So when they do get elected into office, They do not reflect a moderate view, and they're not willing to compromise.
To elaborate on that point, our home state of California has 53 congressional districts, and routinely 50 of those 53 congressional districts are won by a margin of 60% or greater, indicating that the drawing of district lines favors a sure win as opposed to competitiveness.
I would propose a way to make the districts more competitive, as in our own Proposition 11 that's being passed. They have a commission of 14 members where there are 5 Democratic, 5 Republican, and 4 Independent, and they all come together to necessarily redistrict our state of California and to make it more of a competitive district. And although this would help, I wouldn't suggest having more bipartisan, because that's not what Congress is meant to be. It's not meant to let legislation pass here and there. It's a really ugly, process. It's not something you would like. It's usually compared to sausage. You may like sausage, you also like Congress, but you don't want to see the way it's made.
Isn't the role of money undermining the idea of representation today? It costs a doggone much in order to get elected, and members of Congress get more money outside the district. Doesn't that undermine the idea of representation in terms of representing your specific district?
The amount of money being donated to each candidate differentiates greatly and certainly does affect political results of these elections. And for example, our home state of California has a proposition this year called Proposition 15, which would have this one position of the Secretary General of the state, the Secretary of the state, to be elected by a combined pool of public money to ensure that there is no great contrast between candidates and their donations.
However, we've only seen limited success in states that promote clean elections, in which the elections are actually publicly funded. And although they turn out to be not as expensive, only about $2 to $6 per taxpayer, it has been shown that in Arizona, the whole point of these clean elections was to allow for more representation of women in their state legislature, because special interests tend not to back women candidates. However, that has not proven to be effective in actually helping out people other than incumbents in rising to the legislature.
Could we eliminate a lot of the problems that you've identified with gerrymandering and some of the other issues about drawing districts by simply going to a system of at-large, so that you have 53, everybody in California would vote for 53 congressmen, maybe you could have proportional representation and cumulative voting to protect minorities, and you could avoid all these partisan problems and minority representation problems. And courts get involved in elections so much.
I believe that the vote dilution of the minority voice would be too great. However, the court has ruled in White versus Register that at-large election schemes are acceptable as long as it is shown that they were not created simply to dilute the minority vote.
In addition, I think there's a lot of value to having districts that serve to a specific regional interest. For example, California's 23rd congressional district is really strangely drawn and gerrymandered. However, it is necessary to have this 200-mile-long, 5 miles at its narrowest district, because we need to preserve the continuity of fishing interests and offshore drilling interests and other interests that are related to the coastline. And I believe that it's necessary to have such regional interests protected and heard in our legislature.